There's a moment at a restaurant most people recognize immediately. You understand the price, you understand the protein, then the rest of the sentence turns into fog. A sauce you've heard of but can't place. Greens that look familiar but refuse to introduce themselves. And suddenly, the menu feels like a quiet test. What usually follows is a small performance. You nod, you scan ahead, you pretend the unfamiliar words are decorative. Last week, I did exactly that. I ordered confidently, based mostly on tone and hope, trusting whatever arrived would be edible and not surprise me in public. It worked. The effort was unnecessary. This isn't about feeling old or out of touch. It's about speed. Restaurants move quickly. Servers are busy. No one wants to turn dinner into a vocabulary seminar, especially when the table is full and the line of questions would be obvious to everyone sitting there politely waiting. You don't want to ask what beurre blanc means, then what it tastes like, then how to say it, while everyone pauses. That hesitation isn't ignorance, it's social awareness. The pressure isn't knowledge. It's timing, and menus have learned how to exploit that quietly. Menus did change, not dramatically, just enough. More French terms, more Italian phrasing, more descriptions assuming a shared reference point. Even English menus now stack adjectives until you're not sure what's actually on the plate. The expectation shifted from clarity to confidence without announcement. Phones, meanwhile, changed without asking permission. They stopped being just phones. They became cameras that understand text. That feature is usually framed as travel-related, for signs or street names overseas. It rarely gets mentioned as a dining tool, which is strange, because that's where it shines. The real friction at the table isn't ignorance, it's interruption. You want to know what you're ordering without stopping the flow. You want the answer fast, quietly, and ideally without broadcasting that you needed help. That gap is what most modern menus accidentally create now. Here's the shift that matters. On both iPhone and Android, the camera translates words in real time. You don't photograph and send anything, you point. The words change on screen. French becomes English. Italian becomes English. Even complicated English becomes simpler English immediately. You can tap a word and hear how it's pronounced. Then you move on. Beurre blanc becomes butter sauce. Frisée becomes curly endive. Pommes frites become fries. Each translation takes about 2 seconds and removes an unnecessary amount of tension from the decision almost instantly. What surprised me wasn't the translation itself. It was how quickly the anxiety disappeared. Once the meaning was clear, the menu returned to what it's supposed to be. A list of options, not a social puzzle, not a test. Just choices again, like it always should have been. This isn't about becoming fluent or clever. It's about removing friction. You're not using the phone to show off. You're using it to keep dinner moving and order what you actually want. Quietly, efficiently, without turning the moment into an announcement or explanation. So instead of faking it or defaulting to the safest item, there's a simpler move now. Point the camera, read the translation, hear the word if you want, put the phone down, order, that's the fix. Simple, fast, and mercifully private, and the menu stops feeling like a test again. By the time the menu lands on the table, the pressure has already started. You skim prices, lock onto a protein, and then hit the wall of words that sound familiar but don't quite resolve. You don't want to stall, quiz the server, or turn dinner into a seminar. You want the answer quietly and quickly without drawing attention to the fact that you're unsure. That's the real problem being solved here. It's not confusion, it's timing. Restaurants move fast, and hesitation feels louder than it should in a room that's already busy. The useful shift isn't philosophical, it's mechanical. Modern phones stopped treating text as decoration and started treating it as something the camera can understand. That matters at a restaurant more than almost anywhere else, because menus are short, specific, and time-sensitive. You don't need a translation app running all day in the background. You need it for about 10 seconds, right when the decision is being made. After that, it can disappear again, having done its job without ceremony or commitment. On an iPhone, the simplest move is usually the camera that's already open. You point it at the menu and wait half a second. A small live text icon appears. Tap it. The phone highlights recognized words and offers translate immediately. You tap translate and the words change to English while the menu stays on the table. No photo gets sent anywhere. No account is required. The phone handles it locally, answers the question, and then waits for you to move on. If you prefer, you can take a photo first. Open it in Photos, tap the live text icon, then translate. Same result, one extra step. Some people like the pause because it feels more deliberate and slightly less rushed. On Android, most people use Google Translate. Open the app, choose Camera or Instant, point at the menu, and the translation appears directly over the text. You can freeze the view, tap individual words, and listen to pronunciation if needed. That pronunciation option matters more than it sounds. Hearing how a word is said removes a different kind of hesitation, especially when ordering out loud. The goal isn't fluency, it's confidence for one sentence, one moment. Beurre blanc becomes butter sauce. Frisée becomes curly endive. Pommes frites become fries, which usually earns a quiet internal laugh. You don't need to remember any of it later. You just need the answer long enough to choose. What makes this work is speed and discretion. It's a glance and a tap. To anyone else, it looks like you checked a message. The flow of the table stays intact, and the phone goes back down where it belongs. 3 taps, no drama. You read, you decide, you order. The menu stops feeling like a test and goes back to being a list. Dinner keeps moving, and so do you, without explanation, apology, or delay. There's a tendency to think the world suddenly sped up and left us behind. It didn't. The updates just kept coming while most of us were busy doing other things. Jobs, families, actual meals. So when something as small as a menu starts to feel like a test, it's not because we lost ground. It's because the instructions quietly changed while we weren't looking. We've handled that before. Dial-up made a noise like it was angry with you, and we learned to wait. GPS recalculated at the worst possible moments, and we learned to trust it. ATMs swallowed cards, charged fees, and still replaced tellers, and somehow that all became normal. None of that required passion for technology. It required patience and a few workable habits. Menus are just the latest place where that adjustment shows up, quietly and without announcement. Not because food got fancier, but because language did, and because restaurants move quickly. The social pressure isn't about ignorance. It's about timing. You don't want to interrupt the flow. You don't want to hold the table hostage while you ask follow-up questions. You want to order, eat, and enjoy the evening like everyone else. That's where the discreet version of this trick matters. You don't need to hover over the table with your phone like you're documenting evidence. Take a quick photo of the menu when it arrives. Set the phone down. A few seconds later, you can translate in Photos on an iPhone or in Google Translate on Android quietly without anyone noticing or caring. No waving, no announcements, no performance. That small shift changes the whole tone of the experience immediately. You're not scrambling in real time. You're not decoding under pressure. You're just checking information the same way you would anywhere else. When you're ready, you put the phone away and order. The technology does its job and then exits the scene. What's interesting is how quickly the anxiety disappears once you do this a few times. The menu stops feeling like a judgment. It goes back to being a list of options. You're not guessing what something might be. You're choosing what you actually want. That's not about confidence in pronunciation or knowing French. It's about clarity. There's also a quiet dignity in not pretending. Faking it takes effort. It takes mental energy you don't get back. Using the tool takes seconds and removes the whole problem. That's not cheating, that's efficiency. And at a certain point, efficiency starts to look a lot like wisdom. None of this means you need to love your phone. It means you're willing to let it handle one narrow task so you don't have to. You're still the one deciding. The device just clears the fog. That's a fair trade. So if the menu used to make you hesitate, that's fine. Now it doesn't have to. You're not chasing trends, you're walking alongside them. Taking what's useful and leaving the rest on the table. You're still learning, still laughing when something catches you off guard, still very much in it. See you in the next move.